Folks, do not adjust your monitors, your television sets, wherever you're watching this wonderful program here tonight. This is really happening. We're both stunned too.
Oh, yeah.
We're no longer sure we look alike, however, which
Yeah. We have some questions.
we're slightly concerned that everyone's going to click on it, go, oh wait, they don't look alike. Oh, actually, just immediately tune out. We're not sure yet. We're going to
Yeah.
see, but
Yeah.
we're here nonetheless. Long time coming, no doubt. The great Walker Stewart in the building here at the Late Night Grin. Walker, how are you this evening, brother?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I've had a good night so far. Went and saw some family earlier on in the day, and then I had to come right back because we had to. This is almost science to an extent, right? It's a lot of people have been talking. It literally since one of my first shows that I did, where I got like 10 DMs going, "Hey, you're Joe Hulbert," and I said, "Who the hell is Joe Hulbert?" And then I found out who Joe Hulbert is. So, we're cooking tonight, is what I'm saying. I'm happy to be here.
Tremendous. Now, I do think that's, we talked about it very briefly here before we went live, folks, to pull back the curtain, but I do think it makes sense to start there because when I was trying to set this up with you, we both had the same line of thinking, which was, and I think everyone who's watching this can relate. When someone says to you, you look like someone, 99% of the time, you go, no, I don't. I don't look nothing like him.
Yep.
But in this case, we both had the experience of, actually, no, we do look alike. And that was quite the deal. So just how infuriating was those you look like Joe Hulbert DMs initially? I mean, it must have been a little, this dumb podcast guy, like you're there at the Tokyo Dome and they're comparing you to me? Come on.
There was a level of me being like, not like I was like, Joe Hulbert looks like me. Like, all right, let's get the facts straight, right? No, it was funny, and it led to me. It's actually like funny about that because it led to me, of course, finding your content, and then I've gone on to watch some of your content when I can catch it. So of course I wasn't going to miss the late night Grin for anything, but yeah, it was definitely one of those like people are just now finding out who I am, and now I have to just now find out who you are by association. So it was interesting.
I mean, I don't think you have to worry much about me. I think the way we're trending, I think it's pretty quickly going to become I look like you rather than the other way. I think that was a short-lived thing. Okay. As you head off to announce the G1 Climax, I think you're going to be okay. I don't.
Sure, maybe we'll find out.
We will. I often joke about, and I even made the joke with you, and it's revealed itself here on screen. I said the biggest difference between you and I is it's very apparent you take far greater care of your skin. And that is, I think that's become apparent here live on the
It's filters. It's all filters. That's all it is. I have one of those nice cameras with a little filter at all times. Yeah, even in person. Yeah, it's it's one of those things. Yeah, no, I put a lot of effort into my cameras, not my skin. So
it made me step my game up on that front, though. Because
really?
I was like, I'm getting replaced. I need to.
Congratulations. I got into this business. I got into it for one thing. It's to be an inspiration. So I'm happy I can inspire you to do the one thing I can, and that's have clear skin.
That's wonderful. Of course, I say that like the other obvious differences are that firstly, you have that voice, of course, which the audience is reacting to in our chat, and the wrestling audience is reacting to watching New Japan Pro Wrestling. You're also, I believe, just about a foot taller than me. Not counting. No, I'm not.
No.
The photo of you and I next to each other wouldn't be as funny, I don't think.
No, I don't think it will be. Do you guys use feet over there? Are you adjusting for me?
Yeah, no, I'm aware of it. Because of professional wrestling, I'm kind of aware.
Only because of pro wrestling. I love that. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
I have to spread my Western scum of foot and inches everywhere. So that's all I have to my name.
That's a real wrestling. It messes with you about these things. It's like, when I watch boxing, I'm talking to my British pals. I'll use pounds because, of course, I use pounds. 205 live, of course, brother. I'm locked in. I know that.
Okay, I like that 205 live stand.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm the only one left. I think I'm trying my best.
Me and you both. Hey, we got to do late night Grin 205 live review. I will be a regular. I'll make it happen.
We could do, if we did watch-alongs, it would be like there'd be 4 people watching. We'd have such a great time. It would be.
That'd be sick.
Folks, we hope you're fired up for this. If you are, please hit the like button, subscribe, all those great things. We're even going to get some time for some super chats. Please be nice. We have a guest here. Behave. Within reason.
You mean it's fine. I can handle it. You should see my other DMs that don't call me Joe Hulbert. I can handle mean super chats. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
I'm less concerned about them being mean and more kind of, just who knows where they're going to go, right? It's the late night.
Yeah.
But we do have serious business to talk about.
Serious business.
The G1 Climax is a thing that's coming up. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a pretty big deal in wrestling.
No, yeah, I haven't heard about it.
And every time I meet someone, I ask them the same question. So we need to get down to serious business now. Everyone in the audience is waiting for this. It's the first question. It has to be. Of course, the most famous G1 run of all, memories of 2012 and the Machine Gun Carl Anderson soaring into the final, falling just short in 2012. Memories of that, Walker.
Yeah, very specific. I remember when it happened, and I was 10 years old, and
wow.
it was hard.
Yeah.
It was my 10th birthday actually, and I cried. I kicked everyone out of my birthday party. Everyone had to go. All 4 people showed up, sent them right back home, and I never had a birthday party after that. So that's pretty much my big memory from 2012, and it all revolves around the Machine Gun Carl Anderson. That's all I got for you. So.
Well, it's very similar to most people's memories of it. Just a lot of tears. He came so close, right?
Yeah, he did. Well, that's he's always coming close. That Machine Gun Carl Anderson. Yeah.
God loves a triumph, brother. He sure does. All right. Seriously, though.
I talk about that in therapy all the time too. So thanks for bringing that up. By the way, God, good Lord, what did I come on here for?
I ask the hard questions. That's my reputation. The late night Grin. This is.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. Let's get to the hard questions then. Easy ones out of the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But seriously, I am intrigued. We were talking a little bit beforehand about the G1, and I was saying to you, and it's saying that you hear a million times over, is wrestling. There is something romantic to wrestling fans about the G1. The idea that whatever happens, wherever New Japan is at, wherever wrestling is at, the G1 comes around in the summer. Some of the best pro wrestlers in the world. That schedule, all that comes with it, the drama late. I am intrigued, like general G1 memories that are not, obviously the tears about the Machine Gun Carl Anderson, but like sincerely, I'm fascinated by this because everyone has different G1 memories. So I'm intrigued by yours.
One of the first things I saw of G1 relation was the 2016 Kenny Omega win. And I think that was just a moment where, I contextualize this for me. Freshman year of high school was 2016 for me. That was where I really got deep into like the nitty gritty of wrestling outside of the United States, at least where I could. I tried to get a little bit into CMLL. I tried to get into New Japan. I tried to follow Noah or All Japan a little bit. The latter two not as successful for me, but the reason being, Japanese wrestling obviously has the time that it starts, and high school has the time that it starts, and those things intersect a little bit for me. So at the time, at least, I don't go to high school anymore. But yeah, 2016, I had a good friend that was super into New Japan, staying up till 3 or 4 a.m. U.S. Central Standard Time, going, you need to watch this guy, Kenny Omega. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And that was the first little bit of G1 I got to see. So the Omega win in 2016 stands out as probably like a really major one to me. I of course, I made it no secret, like coming into this role in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I've very much been an observer on the back end. I wasn't watching religiously. I wasn't able to do so. I didn't commit the time. But of course, as soon as I got the call, hey, Walker, we're interested in you taking the spot of Kevin Kelly. Kevin's taken his leave to AEW at the time. I was like, well, I'm not going to half-ass this, so to say. So let's pour our all into it, make sure that you're observing, and not only everything that's happening now, not only everything that happened within the past year, but everything since 1972 and dating back to JWA, And so I try to do my best to do that. G1 Climax, though, man, I mean, I've been going back through the archives. What's up there for the time being, at the very least, I've been told that by the end of August, everything G1 related should be back up on NJPW World.
Cool.
So
cool.
Here's to hoping that the archive is fully back up, and then for next year's G1, I can go check out that first 1991 one and go through there. So, but yeah, man, G1 Climax, I'm excited for it. This is gonna be what I consider to be, from my understanding and knowledge and history point, as well as my good pal Chris, much more the historian on New Japan Pro Wrestling than I am. One of the most unique G1 climaxes in the way of, and we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, but no Tanahashi, no Toru Yano, no Tomohiro Ishii, no Taichi. Very interesting key players now turning it from a 32-player or wrestler format down back to the 20 10-person 2-block situation.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot to talk about. I'm excited to get into it.
Well, it's fascinating, I think, for you in particular, because it is the G1, the big talking point, as you just kind of outlined there, is kind of the youth movement, right? And the idea of a fresh start and a new era, and some of the kind of, honestly, some of the more reliable pieces that have defined G1 over the last 15 years not being present, and what that means. And I think it's really interesting for your perspective, because your first G1, and here you are, the voice of what appears to be an emerging new era. How much thought goes into like the idea of making this a new day in New Japan, a new start? And because again, these things through history, we think of a wrestling era. We remember the voices to those eras, right? We remember who the announcer was. You're in a position here to kind of make this your own. How much thought goes into those bigger picture elements, I guess?
Yeah, it's not something I take lightly. And in fact, it was a major reason. Obviously, being offered the position, I was going to take the position either way. I was just doing the starving artist thing for 2.5 years on the independents before that, driving 18 hours round trip for $25 and a hot dog to go produce national TV. So shout out David Marquez. But yeah, no, this is one of those situations where I look at what's coming, not only in G1 Climax, but again, the question being who will main event the Tokyo Dome for the IWGP World Heavyweight title, and even beyond that, the following night, who could potentially end up in the main event during Wrestle Dynasty? Will that play in whatsoever to what happens in G1 season this year? Not sure. We'll find out. But you look at like the last 10 years worth of guys that have won G1 Climax, only one of them out of the 5 names over 10 years is still with the company. That man being Tetsuya Naito, that man being IWGP World Champion. So you look at guys like Ibushi, no longer with New Japan. Okada is in AEW. Tanahashi taken out by that B block qualifying tournament. Kenny Omega in AEW. You know, so this leaves a lot to the open though. With the 32-person situation going down to 20 men, you see it as the ceiling of entry is getting higher, which means the pressure is even more so on these young guys. These young guys like Ren Narita, who, he's joined House of Torture. He's had this little bit of a renaissance since last year's G1. Didn't do great in last year's G1, and if he doesn't prove something here tonight, or rather going forward, definitely going to be a situation where we're going to have to look at and go, well, if we're a 20-man G1 next year, which we very well could be given this going trend that we're going to be seeing, man, maybe a guy like Narita's shoved into a B-block qualifier and knocked out like Taichi was in a shock situation, right? A lot of future conversation to have here, Joe.
Absolutely. You're locked in. I can tell you're super locked. You're more locked in now than I've ever been about anything in my life.
Really? Oh, brother. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. No, I'm fired up, man. I mean, the thing is too, you know, one of the most fun things for me in this role, 22 years of age, this company I work for is older than I am and nearly as old as my damn parents. And I get to not only have the privilege and honor of being the voice, as you said, of this new generation, but also getting to add and lend my voice and any bit of credibility that I can build over the next years to coming G1 Climaxes, which it's no hyperbole when I do call this the most prestigious tournament in professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
The most consistent, the most star-making. And I think that the list of winners as long since 1991 have proven that like this is the tournament to win in pro wrestling overall. So when we're talking about future and we're seeing a guy like Bolton Oleg come in, who is not only taking Toru Yano out of this tournament, takes out the ace himself in Hiroshi Tanahashi, takes out Taichi in the finals. Those were 3 major contenders on my list of predictions going into who would be involved in this year's G1 and who could have been a little bit of a major player, whether it be Tanahashi going for that one last final major main event run in the Tokyo Dome, or Toru Yano being a spoiler as we've seen in the past, or any sort of situation like that, man. Like that's just a testament though to New Japan itself saying, hey, we've heard you say we want the future. And some people not too happy that they're getting the future already. I've seen the social media. I've been reading it. I got Twitter just like everyone else, or X or whatever we're calling it this weekend. But man, like we talk about wanting the future, and guys like Bolton Oleg, guys like Callum Newman, who scored those big wins over Kenta and Yoshihashi, etc., in the A block qualifier. It is definitely a testament to New Japan saying, hey, these guys think they're ready to step up. They gave them the opportunity. They stepped up. Let's see if they can do it in the long form format of a G1 tournament.
Absolutely. It stands out to me. And I can only imagine, I'm actually intrigued by the preparation for a G1 tour because you're going to be there for the whole tour, which is a crazy fall, your first G1. And it's very apparent to me that I always think when it comes to great wrestling announcing, there are two boxes that I think it's difficult to tick at the same time, but I think it's very apparent your preparation, you're attempting to do so in the sense that, the facts and the numbers are great, right? Because with the G1 especially, it tells a tale. I mean, there's so many years behind us. But in addition, one of the beautiful things about a tournament like this are the narratives that follow the athletes in, right? Like each guy, you mentioned Renderer, you circled earlier, and it's like each guy enters the tournament with their own story and their own thing to prove. And some will succeed and some will fall short. How different, I guess, has this been, the preparation for this upcoming tour? Very unique task, as you mentioned, the biggest tournament, the most decorated tournament in wrestling history. What's the prep been like for this?
It's been a little bit different compared to the likes of Best of the Super Junior, for instance. Best of the Super Junior is kind of the one time a year, I argue, outside of Super Junior Tag League, that New Japan loves to put the focus on the junior heavyweight division. And while I think that's a little controversial and believe we should see more main events for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title, I think Despe and Taiji Shimori proved that back at Dominion. These heavyweights, man, your Naito, Umino, Sonata, Takagi, all of them going all the way down the line through Block A and Block B, and even in the G1 qualifier tournaments that we had for Block A and Block B, respectively, all have had a little bit more shine on them, so to speak, throughout the year. And that gives us so much more to talk about, so much more to contextualize, and also a lot more of these smaller points where, one of my favorite things to dive into on commentary, and I hope that this comes across beyond numbers and beyond calling moves, is the emotional states of guys in these tournaments, the mental states that they're going to be in going in, whether it be like a big one we're going to be talking about. And I've already got my notes written now. I'm looking at my night one notes, the 75 pages I have going in. El Phantasmo losing his tag team partner, Hikuleo, nowhere to be seen. God knows wherever the hell he's going to be going. Doesn't matter for El Phantasmo. He's got a G1 to win, right? And, you look at that. You look at a guy like Shota Umino in Block A, who started off the year with a loss at Wrestle Kingdom, beat Ren Narita in one match, and all of a sudden declares himself the ace of New Japan and has not followed it up whatsoever at all for the rest of the year. Or even a guy like Sonata, where, hey, what was Sonata doing at this point last year? Reigning as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. If there's one way he's going to be able to redeem that loss from Wrestle Kingdom 18 to Naito, it's going to be beating Naito in the Tokyo Dome main event the following year. So many guys come into this tournament with things to prove, chips on their shoulder, and the chips only grow bigger and bigger when the bell sounds and when they're under the bright lights in Osaka for night one, right? And I think that is all those little pieces, all those little details. Like a lot of my notes that I'm looking at, a lot of it is numbers, but the numbers aren't going to be what connect with people emotionally. It's those stories that we talk about. And again, the way that these stories separate for an entire year and then intersect once again, like the last time so-and-so and so-and-so met was in last year's G1. Here's the past they've gone, and goddamn, they find themselves back in the middle once more. That's where the money is right there for me.
I love it. Folks, how can you not be excited? Are you hearing this? You're hearing the passion, the fire, the enthusiasm. It's incredible. I love to hear it. We're going to talk kind of, I guess, more, general in terms of your New Japan experience thus far in a moment. But first, I want to throw to some of these super chats because they are compiling rapidly. Walker, you're a very popular man. Let's get to a couple of them here. I'm sure some of them, Bam here says once in a lifetime event.
That's real. That's real. He gets it.
Yeah, there you go. Shites Spurs said, "Oh my God, this absolutely clears the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap."
That's real. Hey, look at this. You got a community of intelligent people. I love this.
I always say to the folks, my favorite super chats are the ones that just put us over and they don't even ask me anything. You know, they're just like, look at this. This is wonderful. It's
Well,
great.
because they're giving you money and complimenting you.
Yeah.
There's no better. God, how do I get money and get complimented? Yeah, you got to teach me your ways when we get off here.
Well, you know, I have some skills. I haven't found them yet, but so people say, like, here we go. Brain buster, time stands still, indeed.
Real. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I think we have a question. Bam, who, to be fair, Bam earned the right, not because he's just sent money for this one, but he also already put us over. So, you know,
Yeah,
you got to
okay, that's
respect
good.
it.
You got to have the back to back. Yeah.
You do, yeah. We respect it very much. Bam says, Mr. Walker, do you have any ideas you can share to grow the audience of New Japan in the States and around the world strong and partnerships with AEW, CMLL? Interesting one. Big question, to be fair. Big question.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I cannot pretend to know more than I know on marketing strategies or different things like that, but I could tell you what I would like to see personally, and that does not mean that it's anything we are going to see.
Right.
I have long been a proponent, even prior to my entry into New Japan Pro Wrestling, for clip sharing, GIF, whatever sharing. I think that it is such a crucial element and part to growth in a day and age of social media. I think that if New Japan Pro Wrestling are to put themselves on the level with any other wrestling company in the world that is in this upper echelon, I'm talking CMLL, I'm talking AAA, WWE, AEW, and even some other competition that might exist within the Japanese space and All Japan and Noah and whatever. A majority of these companies are putting out clips of their high spots, are putting out clips of their massive moments. And while New Japan World's production staff and the Twitter and all that are doing that exactly, the sharing of those beyond a retweet or a like is something that seems to be frowned upon. That is down to a TV contractual situation that goes way beyond not only my pay grade, but a lot of people in New Japan Pro Wrestling itself on a basic level. But I would love to see if something could be done about that. I think that the clip sharing and stuff like that by content creators like yourself, content creators like anyone else in the space that just have the pure-hearted intention of, sure, they get the likes off it, sure, they get the clout chase, they get that rush of adrenaline, seeing the numbers go up, I get it, but they are also sharing the product that they love, and I don't think that they should be attacked for it. So that's a really big one to me. I would love to see consistency within the New Japan Strong shows, which you and I talked about a little bit before going on air.
Yeah.
From a production standpoint, I think that the level of talent that are on those cards is incredible. It's not like you're getting half-baked New Japan Pro Wrestling talent. You are getting the best that we have. We have Naito. We have Zack Sabre Jr. We have Yota Tsuji. We have all these guys that are coming in and putting on these great displays. All that being said, I think that consistency in terms of maybe could we find ourselves back on a television product with any of these things, the way that we saw the original New Japan Strong incarnation become. Could we find ourselves at least knowing, hey, we're running monthly instead of every 2 months, 3 months, whatever. All of these are things that we build to, of course. These aren't you just pull the trigger and pray that it works out, right? But just a couple of things there that I would really like to see focused on. The clip sharing, the strong shows being more centered, and partnership with AEW and CMLL, maybe a little bit more of an equity situation there. I think there's a lot to get into that, again, goes beyond my level of conversation. But, for instance, Forbidden Door was an incredible time. I would have loved to be there in person. I would have loved for there to be some New Japan English coverage on the AEW side of that pay-per-view. I would have loved if we could even get some of that down in the CMLL ranks when CMLL and New Japan had Fantasticmania in Mexico just earlier on in the month, right? A lot to be said there, a lot to be done there. I don't think the growth ever stops, but those are just a couple of ideas that I have bouncing around in the head, and I'm sure I could think of many, many more as time went on. So
I love it. Thanks for the question, Bam. It's good to have a good question on the program.
Yeah, I love it, Bam. Thank you, man.
I'm glad that earlier on, folks, I asked Walker, I said, would you like to, should we pre-tape this or should we just let the audience do super chats? Walker said, well, bring them on. I'm glad you did now because they can even do my job. Now I get paid for compliments and I don't even have to ask questions. It's wonderful. It's going great. Liliana says, I'm going to ask about how Finley will do. My
Oh,
goodness.
I'm sure David Finley will tell you all about how he will do. A man who definitely likes to talk about himself, and I get paid to do it as well, though, so I have no problem. Joe's not paying. That's not Joe. I don't get any of this super chat money, by the way.
Hey,
So I'm just
kayfabe.
yeah. You throw your hand up in the air. Good Lord, have mercy. All right. Uh, no. David Finley, man, IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion, has a lot to gain by winning his third ever G1 entrance, but a lot to lose as well. We talk about it all the time. If you beat any champion in New Japan Pro Wrestling, there is a strong, strong case you can make for challenging for that title. David Finley got that one defense that he wanted over Nick Nemeth, or that victory he wanted over Nick Nemeth, got that first defense over Sonata back in Sapporo earlier on in the month. I genuinely feel that Finley has a really good shot of making it very far. I don't know where I would place him in terms of semifinals. Could he make it all the way to the final? I'm not sure. But I'm sure David Finley, if he sees a clip of this, will probably have a couple of choice words for me himself on that concept. So, yeah, I think Finley has a very strong shot going in though as global champion.
Quickly to piggyback on this, because I find this fascinating. So, as the English announcer for New Japan, it's no doubt apparent to you, because I'm sure you see it on social and stuff. Like a lot of the the audience that will be watching that feed is, I use this term kind of hesitantly because I know it comes with, it feels like I'm being, but the smart fan, and I say that lovingly. That would be me. I'm not saying it to dismiss anyone. Is it slightly challenging at times to divorce that fan, the consensus opinion of that fan on some of the talent, from the job you are doing as getting the talent over in the way they're presented on the actual show? Because every wrestler, there's opinions, right? And it's your job to kind of, you're aware of them, but it isn't your job to put that over necessarily. Is that a difficult thing?
Yeah, I think from the beginning it might have been a little bit difficult because I was relying on fan response and fan interaction to gauge maybe some of the talking points that I should have going into a next show. But now I have kind of manifested that in a way where I am able to see the online discourse and set that apart from, well, here's the narrative that is being driven forward time and time again. In fact, a lot of what I like to do now alongside Chris and the color side of things is I love to not exactly respond on air, but there you can take points and pieces of what people are talking about and work them into the narrative of the story. Here is what okay, Jon Moxley, IWGP World Heavyweight Champion at the time. A lot of people were talking about how Moxley wasn't on every tour. And we could have just completely ignored that. We could have, made up every excuse in the book. But the reality is, what we're looking in front of us, Jon Moxley was not on every single tour. And with that being the case, if you listen to the English commentary for Dominion, the Lumberjack match, Moxley and Evil, Chris and I had a little bit of a back and forth where we talked about, I say, hey, a lot of people don't want Evil to win, but I think even more people want the IWGP World title back in mainland Japan on every single tour. And, Chris and I kind of had that back and forth based off of fan reception and fan reaction. And so I think there are ways that you are able to kind of see that stuff, separate it from what you as a professional are supposed to do, but still go on to address those things and work them back in the narrative.
Yeah. That's great, because I also think that for that hardcore fan, it almost meets them in the middle, right? In the sense that it's like, my opinion is being voiced, but not in a way that disparages the show or takes away from the talent. You're still, you're just creating that. You're kind of bringing that conversation to the show. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. And I'm never one, I've seen some pretty egregious claims online of, this wrestler is bad, this wrestler is great, things that I've agreed with, disagreed with, whatever. None of that stuff I ever have a problem with, because the whole point of what I do is to get people talking. I hate X wrestler. I don't think he should be in this spot. Great. Tweet about it. I'd love to hear about it, because you're engaging with our product. Whether it's you, quote unquote, peel back the curtain, the booking, okay, whatever. Like, it is, reality is, you're engaging with the product, you're watching it, and you're finding a way to, people are tweeting about this stuff because they enjoy getting that thought out there one way or another. So if there's a level of enjoyment attached to what we are doing our job correctly one way or another.
Passion is everything, right? You love seeing the passion about the thing. You're absolutely, that makes perfect sense. Okay, the confirmed shoot here, one of my close friends, a founding father of the Late Night Grin. My go-to question is the Machine Gun Carl Anderson one. He goes straight to his one here. Walker, big fan. Wondering your thoughts on Nick Bockwinkel. Now, I'm fearful you're too young for extensive thoughts, but I could be wrong. Any Bock thoughts?
Yeah, hell of an AWA world champion. Nick Bockwinkel, one of the best to ever do it. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. And if you don't agree with me on that, you might be wrong, and that's okay. We're allowed to be wrong. I just said it about social media. So yeah, Nick Bockwinkel, hell of a hand. There we go.
Hell of a hand. There you go. You know, everything you said before that, I'm going to get a text in 30 seconds. Hell of a hand, question mark, you know. Like,
there you go.
Yeah, that's some tapes to study for another day. You know, maybe when you get the AWA gig, you can go back through their history. You know,
I'm working on it. Yeah, actually, the goal was to jump from New Japan to the AWA, so we're making it work. Yeah,
I'm sure that will come to be. I'm sure that makes sense.
I'll reach out to Nick myself. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That'll
work.
Andrew says, "Will you do commentary for Wrestle Kingdom Week or Stardom shows?"
I don't want to put an official declaration on that, but there is potential for that conversation. I know the names to talk to, and that conversation will be had one way or another. I know I'll be in attendance for if I'm not in the English broadcast booth, I'll be in attendance live from, I think I'll be flying out December 27th for that kind of series of shows leading all the way up to Dynasty and New Year Dash, and then heading back home. So I'll be in Japan, and I think that's a good sign. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, tremendous. Thanks to Super Chat, Andrew. Okay, we have, and it says, "God, it's LNG presents Twin Magic."
Nice, yeah.
Bill Barmy. It was a graphic that our friend Anjam made. I'll bring it up on screen. It's the one I used on Twitter.
I saw it. I think it was probably my favorite promotional part.
Here it is. Here's the look.
Yeah, all right, we're cooking with that one. Wow, my beard was so pointy. I like it. Oh my.
Very strong graphic. Thank you for the super chat. Jumanji Hunter says, "Big fan, Joe's. Love your work. New Japan work." Good job.
That's fair. I respect that. Thank you.
I'm telling you can't. Once the G1's done, I'll be a distant memory. I'm telling you, dude. I'll just be a guy you used to know. That's fine.
One day you're gonna accidentally get an email from New Japan staff sending you the flight to Wrestle Kingdom. They're gonna mess it up somehow, and you're gonna replace me. It's gonna be a hard day for me. No one will know. That's the problem.
I'm not sure that will ever happen, but I definitely think there's a chance that one day the Late Night Grin opens with you as the host.
That's okay. We're cooking with that idea. Here we are.
Yeah. That feels more feasible, but
that's okay,
but we shall see. Frank says, "Walker, could you break down what the good-looking Emperor Jake Lee brings to the G1 Climax as an outsider? Obligatory, you look similar stuff." Now, I do want to set the stage for this and say, there are members of the Grinner Circle, as we call them, our wonderful community that are, I'm a fan of some wrestlers, but I would say some of these gentlemen, they're obsessed with Jake Lee. Obsessed. I say.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a big question for them, I feel.
That's strong. And to the Grinners that are obsessed with Jake Lee, I'd have to say that Jake Lee is probably just obsessed with himself. I think that the proof there comes in the fact that the good-looking guys, for anyone unaware, have disbanded within Pro Wrestling Noah. No more. As of, I believe they have a show coming up, Pro Wrestling. I believe it's July 14th, 13th, something along the lines. You can Google it. It's there. We have the internet. And coming up on that show will be the clash of GLG, so to speak, in the very end. Jake Lee will be hot off of that going into G1 Climax. Said that, hey, the reason that we are doing this, the reason that I'm breaking up this situation is because I need to focus on me. Well, as far as I've seen in Pro Wrestling Noah, Jake Lee has always been about Jake Lee. So what does this mean? Is this inspired off of the Naito loss altogether? Is it inspired off of the G1 Climax announcement, which the GLG disbandment and the G1 Climax brackets came out on the exact same day back in Sapporo? I'm not sure, and I think that Jake Lee's not going to hesitate to tell us when the time is right, but this is definitely going to be a bit of a proving ground for Jake Lee in a lot of ways. We've only seen him team alongside the War Dogs against LIJ in 10-man tag action in New Japan, and then, of course, all-together action, Tetsuya Naito, Jake Lee. We saw how that worked out in Naito's favor, and what Naito has gone on to do, becoming a world champion again. I think there's something to be said overall, and this is not just about Jake Lee, but Konosuke Takeshita as well in the outsider category for this tournament. For 79 days, the IWGP World Heavyweight title was outside the confines of Japan rather than for a couple of defenses. Jon Moxley holding that title in the United States as a part of AEW. The IWGP World title now back in Japan under Naito, but Konosuke Takeshita comes in from the United States and goes, I want to bring that G1 Climax trophy back to the United States, back to be represented on AEW. Despite being, of Japanese descent, Takeshita, he's AEW through and through at this point, contractually and in every other way. And while I'm sure Takeshita grew up wanting to hold that G1 Climax trophy in his hands, by God, I'm pretty certain that there is not a member of the New Japan roster that wants to see another piece of hardware go back to the United States, or even outside the confines of New Japan Pro Wrestling overall, whether it is AEW, whether it is Pro Wrestling Noah. I'm sure Jake Lee would keep that thing locked up in a little nice box, big nice box. It's a big trophy, huge. But all that being said, outsiders are definitely going to be playing a factor in this, despite there only being 2 out of the 20.
It's always a fun part of the G1, always. So I appreciate the I hope that scratched the itch for our Jake Lee stands among us there. That was very strong. Thank you, Frank. Liliana asked, will David Finlay maybe get to the quarterfinals? You suggested you feel like that's probably, you seem like you feel that was his peak, to be honest with you. Don't put words in your mouth,
Yeah. It's strong for me to call it his peak, but I definitely think that is, he's not limited to the quarterfinals, but I could see a quarterfinal appearance, especially with other members of the War Dog being in the situation as well. I mean, keep in mind, Gabe Kidd also in this tournament as well. Definitely a heavy hitter. Would have loved to see Alex Coughlin in this tournament had things not turned out with Coughlin the way that they had. But man, I think War Dogs are going to show out one way or another in this one.
Yeah, I do want to make it clear. The last thing I want to do here at the Late Night Grin is get you heat with the War Dogs, or any more heat, I should say.
I have a little bit already, so we're working on getting rid of that.
Pretty aggressive fellas, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah. I've heard. I've been there.
All right. Thank you for the super chat. Darren says, well, do you have a favorite match ever? Big question. Always a big question.
That's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Is it bad if it's a throwaway 205 Live match? We were talking about 205 Live earlier on.
Absolutely not. It's good, if anything. Right?
The Mustafa Ali, Cedric Alexander, Heart and Soul match, brother. That thing goes crazy. That thing goes crazy. I'm just saying. It's just a random throwaway 205 Live match. I don't know. That's not the real answer. It can't be the real answer. It has to be something bigger. God, I've watched so much wrestling, and it's hard to think of one. I think I have a lot of a personal attachment to this one because I called it. But Bryan Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr. from New Beginning in Osaka this year might have been my favorite match. It's definitely one out of the top 5 favorite matches I've ever called. 2 of them are Bryan Danielson matches. It's that one, and then Bryan Danielson, Kazuchika Okada from Wrestle Kingdom. And those are like 1A and 1B for me right now. Danielson's always been, ever since I was young, remember Daniel Bryan, WWE title win, WrestleMania 30 main event, first ever pay-per-view I got to watch. Saw my dad's heart break when the Undertaker streak was broken, and I saw my heart swell 10 times the size, and it stayed that way ever since when Daniel Bryan won the world title in the main event. And I've enjoyed following his career out through the injury, the retirement, the comeback, and now getting to say I got to be a little piece of the history with Danielson's Tokyo Dome appearance and Danielson's big Zack Sabre Jr. match, second one that he got to have on national broadcast. Those are definitely 2 things for me.
Well, I love to hear that, because I actually was wondering I was intrigued as to whether or not being on the call is a lesser experience in the sense that it's work and you're focused, right? I'd imagine but it sounds like it actually enhanced those experiences because you're riding the wave almost, I guess, right?
Well, and I'm big on wrestling commentary having pauses of silence and moments to breathe, and allow you to feel the crowd, allow you to feel the environment. A lot of times when I'm taking those personally, it's because I'm feeling the environment myself.
Yeah.
And when you're in a live arena situation, you get to feel that environment. It definitely enhances the experience. And I think there's a level of it too where being able to control the narrative EC3 style is kind of it's a fun it's a fun thing. I mean, I got into this this industry and covered the sport because I love storytelling, right? I mean, it's the number one thing for me. It's the number one aspect of the industry, whether it's in Japan, Mexico, the United States, or Peru. So I absolutely love just being able to do what I do, man. And yeah, and get to do it with like Danielson, one of my favorite wrestlers ever, Okada, just a legend in the business at 36 years old, which is already insane. And Zack Sabre Jr., who I believe is now the best technical wrestler in the world by any standard that you can measure him up to. Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing in the world.
I love it. Tremendous. Okay. Bam. Thank you for answering my question, Mr. Walker. And Joe is doing an amazing job. I'm just reading super chats at this point. I mean, people are just having a great time. It's turned out to be quite the payday. He says, is there a dream match that you would love to be on commentary for?
It's hard to admit it because it just happened, actually. Bryan Danielson, Shingo Takagi. I've not made it a secret that Shingo Takagi is my favorite wrestler in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Just as an athlete, as an entertainer, the intensity so unmatched in every single regard. If I have a dark horse pick for this year's G1, it is Shingo Takagi. Hoping that his body and his mind is able to keep up with the pace that I know he will want to go in this year's G1. We could be seeing a quarterfinal, semifinal, even a final run for Shingo Takagi. Who knows? But yeah, that being what it is, Danielson, Shingo Takagi. As soon as that announced, I checked my email a little bit. I was like, hey, we got anything coming through? Because that's one to definitely I would have loved to have my eye on. So when the rematch happens in Japan, I'm gonna make sure I'm there for it.
Absolutely. And hopefully it will. That'd be great. I think any wrestling fan wants to see Danielson take some more dates in New Japan. I just think it's such a cool visual and vibe. It's awesome.
Yes.
So
Incredible.
I'm very hopeful that will happen for you. Okay, bam. Favorite Kenny Omega match? Questions to both.
Ooh, Joe, I'd love to hear your answer. I've been talking a lot.
Well, it's been great. It's the easiest show I've ever done.
Technically, Joe's been talking the whole time because.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I would immediately go to, I don't think it's actually as good technically as the Okada matches, but if you just favorite, I would go to the Tanahashi match from Wrestle Kingdom in 2019. I thought, to me, that is the best I've seen kind of stylistic and like kind of meta commentary about wrestling portrayed within a wrestling match. In that they were kind of having a debate about like whose style was better, and but they portrayed that in the wrestling match in a way that didn't feel phony or silly. It felt totally like authentic. So that would probably be my pick, I think.
I think, oh gosh, I was just watching it earlier. Omega Goto. Yeah, no, G1 Omega Goto. God bless. Yeah, that's incredible. Kenny Omega Konosuke Takeshita from All Out 2023 is another one that really, I'd heard the name Konosuke Takeshita before. That one really put Takeshita on the map for me, and now getting to see Takeshita go into Block B of G1 this year is definitely, that's kind of a mental connection I've had for a minute. Like when I'm like, oh, a standout Takeshita performance. You could consider most Takeshita performances stand out in their own way, but you never forget your first time. So
yeah, I was lucky to be there for that one, dude. That
really? That's sick. I love it.
Unbelievable match. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Bam. Reese says, here for the Coach Hulbert Sonata strategy meeting. I gotta be honest. I don't think I'm taking the coaching job. I don't think I'm well equipped. I actually wanted to bring this up. There was some lore that I'm way behind on Sonata lore.
Okay.
But there was the lore about how long he should hold the submission before the moonsault. And it seemed you were very passionate about this. So could you catch me up on, because if I do take the coaching gig, it feels like something I should know, really, It feels like
I don't think I should be feeding you the answers to the test in this way. So I think if I tell you, you're banned from taking the coaching gig. I mean, that's
I can live with that.
It's a lot of money on the table. I mean, Sonata needs it, and here's why. I said earlier on, man, There's some guy, I made a tweet about it earlier. When people ask me who my G1 pick is, my answer is going to be different for pretty much every media appearance I do, because it is such a need to win situation for so many of these guys. You have guys like Jeff Cobb, Zack Sabre Jr., etc., who have been in multiple G1s, had multiple strong standings. But if it's going to happen, it's got to happen this year, or the confidence is going to start to fade from the audience, which that audience drives so many of our athletes forward in these ways. Umino calling himself the ace and then failing time and time again. It's put up or shut up for Shota. Yota Tsuji tasted gold with New Japan Cup, but failed just short in Sakura Genesis for the world title. Once that LIJ main event in the Tokyo Dome, by God, we'll see if it happens. But for Sonata, man, again, I said it earlier on, I'll say it again. What was Sonata doing a year ago? Reigning as champion, went on to have the longest reign in IWGP World Heavyweight title history, right? And going from there now to loss, injury, loss again. The comeback's got to be right now if it's going to happen whatsoever in the year of 2024 for Sonata. All of this to say, Sonata's Skull End, incredibly effective. I wish I had. You haven't equipped me correctly for this question, Joe. I need the ESPN style, be able to draw on the screen with the video. You should have come prepared for the super chat. But I think Sonata, here's the thing. Sonata, he has that skull end locked in, and I think as soon as he feels the body just limp ever so slightly, he's like, all right, I'm out. Into the moonsault, goes for it. Sometimes he's out of the way. Sometimes he hits it, and it's just not enough. I think that some of our roster has gotten a little smart to that, where they'll feign the limp. They'll feign the limp. Arm goes down, body goes limp. Sonata goes, hell yeah, it's my time, to the top, dive out of the way. Bam, that's it. So I think Sonata leaves that skull end till he physically can't anymore. And I'm talking referees pulling him off because he won the damn match, right? I think that skull end could be much more effective as a actual match ender rather than a setup for a great rounding body press. But I'm just gonna leave it there. I think Sonata should keep that in 7 minutes max minimum.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. I understand. Yeah, I understand the argument. Really, I don't really know what the response to that argument would be. It sounds true. We just kind of, use talking contenders. You kind of covered this, but Liliana says, I feel Zack Sabre Jr. is due. How do you think he'll do? He's certainly, I think, for, again, that hardcore fan, he feels like a little bit of a sentimental favorite from my perspective. Anything else on Zack?
I even look at Zack Sabre Jr. I mean, and I'll speak very freely on this. Zack has been one of the New Japan roster members who has helped me the most in my transition from the independents to being signed full-time with the company, both just in understanding Japanese culture, teaching me certain Japanese phrases just to get around and make life a little bit easier. Zack was a guy who I was too anxious and scared when I first got in to reach my hand out, and he reached his hand out to me instead and said, hey, I'll help you out. I'll pull you up. And that makes me, knowing that he was willing to do that for me in all actuality, really knowing nothing about me and really thinking, hey, this guy could be out of here in 2 months if he messes up. Him being willing to do that and pull me along, incredibly kind. And that makes me want to root for him just in general. A good guy, Zack Sabre Jr. is truly. I think that our Japanese audience, people talk about the difference between the Western audience and the Japanese audience. And I don't like to do that often. But there is something to be said about international talents and the reception that they get in front of the homeland Japanese audience. And Zack Sabre Jr.'s dedication ever since his Noah days to learning the Japanese language, learning the custom, learning the culture, and just having been around since those early 2010s Noah's days, whenever he was in that Noah dojo and then coming into New Japan Pro Wrestling and making a name for himself here. I think that has really adorned him to a lot of fans in New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think Zack Sabre Jr. is a hell of a draw. And if you're asking me, a Zack Sabre Jr. Tetsuya Naito main event in the Tokyo Dome could, on a weekend of all things, I think that's going to be numbers if that would be the case. So I think if there's any year Zack has to do it, it's this year, because once again, you start taking these losses, you're going to start to be seen as a Goto type. And Goto's in this tournament, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And you don't see a lot of people picking Hiroki Goto. But if he had won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more G1s that he's appeared in, I mean, we wouldn't be saying that about Goto that much. And every member of our roster does everything in their possibility to be able to keep from that being labeled on them. So Zach having something like that in the back of his mind, will that be pressure that Zach is incapable of overcoming, or will that be pressure that turns him from coal into a diamond? We're going to have to find out.
Indeed, I think that's where that's where my heart is. That's where my emotional investment is. I think it would be a great story. But I'm intrigued. You mentioned that experience with Zach. What is the kind of general? Would that be more of an outlier in terms of interaction with talent? Are you kind of separate generally, or do you interact with a lot of the talent?
I interact with I interact with as much of the talent as I want to.
Right.
I interact with the international talent quite often. I'm on the buses. We're on the tours all together. Guy like Chris
Mhm.
Charlton, for instance, he has an office role with New Japan that he's not been shy about. It's not a big secret. I'm not revealing anything here. So an office guy, not exactly going to be on the bus, and sticks close to that Tokyo area anyway. So he makes his own travel. I'm not afforded that same luxury, and I'm not one of those guys who's going to go Uber everywhere and ride a train by myself just to be away. I've very found myself in the mix with the guys, which I'm incredibly blessed with, especially leaving. I just got out of a pretty long-term relationship, but leaving that relationship, having to up and move all of my stuff for 30 days to Japan, being away from parents, being away from all friends and family that I've met on the American independent scene. You kind of lack that brotherhood when you first go out there. And so being able to build that with a guy like Zach and a couple other guys on the New Japan roster, and just kind of tightening those things. Zach and TJP were the two, Zach, TJP, Jeff Cobb, 2-3 main people to first go out of that way and really try and warm me up a little bit and show like, hey, dude,
Mhm.
it's cool. Like you don't have to be like as if you're part of the office or feel weird talking to, like, you're one of the guys here. And I've really been appreciative of that going forward. It's completely shaped how I'm able to enjoy Japan and enjoy, working for New Japan itself. So
That's wonderful. Absolutely. So, you mentioned with Zach, that kind of hesitation almost, and he was the one who reached out. That's wonderful. I mean, I'm interested as to who's the wrestler that you would say would be the top of the list in terms of you were most like kind of in awe of when you saw them. You were most hesitant to actually extend because it must be strange, right? You've seen these guys; they have such legend. There's a mystique there. Who was the name you think that you were most kind of hesitant to reach out to?
yeah, that very interesting one. So I talked about my affinity for Bryan Danielson as an athlete and as a performer, and him getting to come over for Wrestle Kingdom and then being a part of New Year Dash. Blackpool Chaos Club was in full effect. It was awesome. And it just so happened that Danielson and I had the exact same amount of time to wait, like 5 hours in Haneda Airport before our flights went back to the States. And I actually took Danielson around because he was like, hey, do you know where I could get like a kimono? And I was like, what do you need a kimono for? And he's like, oh, it's for my wife. And he wanted to get one for his kid as well, I believe. And we go around we went around for hours trying to find a store that sells kimonos. And finally we found it. And he looks me dead in Bryan Danielson, incredibly interesting individual, looks me dead in the eye and was like, do we really need this? Do we really need these material items, these possessions? What does this mean to us? What do we? And he starts wax poetic about physical needs and items. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. This guy rocks. You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't agree with you at all, but you're sure, man. Yeah, whatever. You ball, right? That's fine. Ball. Yeah, dude. So like that was a weird one where it's like we were the only two in, like, they had us get a taxi together because we were leaving it near the same time, and then our stuff got pushed or whatever. And kind of getting in the car, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm with Bryan Danielson right now. I watched this kid since I watched this dude since I was a kid. And then going from that to like we're talking wrestling, and then we're talking wrestling psychology, and then we're talking about the differences of wrestling in Mexico and Germany, and the difference between England and Germany just in wrestling style and the nitty-gritty of stuff. And we did that for like an hour in the taxi, and then just going and buying a kimono, and then going and getting coffee. And it's like, oh wow, like it's almost like a pinch yourself moment where, like, I'm sure guys had to have felt like this when they met Flair, or like, in his 2000s WWE run or whatever, right? So there's levels to it. Danielson was definitely one of those interactions that I had, though, that made me kind of take the step back and be like, this is what we're doing here. All right,
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's great too, because it's one of those stories that even hearing it sounds surreal, but it also immediately makes sense. I think everyone watching this goes, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That is superb. Okay, I want to go back to your first show in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling, because I'm kind of fascinated by the way they approach the English announce team, because through the years, it has always felt like that team had a lot of freedom. And so I'm interested, how much direction your first show, was you 21 at the time you went for your first show?
21.
21 years old, first show, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Is it as simple as you are going live in 5, 4, or is it more tightly produced than that in your head? So, like, walk me through that a little bit best you can.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my first show in Japan was not actually my first show with New Japan Pro Wrestling, because the first show that I did live, first show I did at all, was a pre-recorded Super Junior Tag League. So my first New Japan show, the memory is me sitting right at this desk, all the same stuff surrounding me, staring at my 2-monitor setup, my notes on one screen and the show on another, and me with the same soundboard and headset on. So I was in this exact same spot. So to go from that to October 28th, Fighting Spirit Unleashed in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we like, all right, sound check, cool, whatever. Getting to work with Veda Scott for the first time on a New Japan production. We had done like a couple of indie shows together, and kind of having that situation where I'm going, well, I'm thrust into this lead spot. I wanted this. This is what I've been dreaming and praying of since I was grinding on the independents for nothing. But what do we do now that we're here, right? Should I be leading a meeting right now with Veda, going over like, talking points and like, here's this stat and here's this stat and talking dynamic? What is it? And I kind of just got to the point where I was like, Walker, you're overthinking this. You're stressing yourself out. If no one's told you to do something, just do what you know how to do. And then we called wrestling, right? Simple as that. My first show in Japan, 4 days later, about November 2nd, it was the go home to Power Struggle. So it was the last night of Super Junior Tag League. That was the night everything was solidified for the finals for that tournament, and then going into Power Struggle for the show. And first night working with Chris, first night live in Japan, and we were in Osaka, and I remember I remember being really mad at Chris for a very stupid reason. So Chris had asked me, he's like, you want to go get ramen, right? And I was like, hell yeah, let's go get ramen. I'm wearing this like pretty decent little like baby blue, or maybe it's a gray shirt or something like that, gray button up, black jacket. I'm looking professional. I got my swag on. And all of a sudden we're eating ramen, and I didn't realize how much the broth stains. And I may had dropped something into the bowl, and it just all down the center. It was the first show live in Japan, all down the center. And I said, Chris, so we're maybe 5 minutes from the hotel. Craziest rib I've ever seen. I'm like, Chris, I'm going to go back to the hotel with the venue in walking distance. I'm going to go back to the hotel, and I'm going to change this shirt. I have a new shirt. I don't want to do this. No, come on. We have to go. And Chris forced me to the venue, and I meet the world staff. I meet the boys. I was so angry. It's just so this stupid BS now, but it's just funny to think back on. I wasn't even angry with him. I was just like, come on, Walker, you should know that food stains your clothes, dummy. Like, this is, oh my God. But yeah, so my first ever on camera on Japanese soil, thank God, like the production for like the lighting for that show was a little bit strange, because there's like right in the center, just a tiny bit you can see on camera, that stained ramen. But preparation for the show is the exactly same what it is now. I do my notes. My notes have grown exponentially. They've changed. They've altered. They're almost different every single tour, the way that I structure them, between, just formatting and different things like that, trying to condense. Do I leave this out? Do I put this in? But a lot of it just comes down to Chris and I sitting here looking at the card and going, anything to talk about? And then we talk about what we talk about, and then bam, we're good to go. It's no production meeting. It's no anything like that. I think it's a little different on the Japanese broadcast side of things. But if I'm being honest, I think that as much as sometimes a little bit of structure would be nice within our organization side of things, it's on us to put into place if we want to do it. And I think that there's no need for it unless there is a need called upon. If the broadcasts were sloppy, if the broadcasts were unprofessional, which at times things have bordered. All right, I'm not going to pretend perfection has happened throughout 10 years of English coverage, but all things being considered, like, I think that with the guidance that we're given, which is very much nothing, and the abilities that Chris and I have naturally as orators, as storytellers, I'm very proud of how the broadcast has come along. Since my first show live in Japan, November 2nd, I even felt a difference between the November 2nd show and 2 days later, my first big show being Power Struggle, where it was me, Chris, and Robbie Eagles joining me for the broadcast. I felt a major difference there. I felt an exponential difference for Wrestle Kingdom going into New Beginning. And I feel like every single time or every single tour I have over, the solo broadcasts I do get cleaner. The work I do with Chris gets cleaner. And the big thing that I'm proud of, the work with wrestlers coming in and joining for color halfway through the show gets cleaner as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think that's a cool dynamic when, especially on a longer tour, when a wrestler sits in for like a night or two. I always think that's neat. So, absolutely. You mentioned that first experience calling from home in the studio. Yeah. And I've seen you tweet about this. And to me, that must be very, very challenging. Is that a fair assessment, or is it you just lock in and you do your gig? How's that experience from home?
It's definitely a lock-in situation. But I'm very happy that it is a part of the role, partially because, yes, it does allow me to have a little bit more time with family than I may, particularly if I had to fly out for night 4 of whatever, and then have to fly right back because the next night isn't for another week and a half, right? So it is a blessing in that way, and I appreciate that's something that TVSI has the money to fly me out if they really want to, but it's like almost a gift of a sense. Hey, you can, as long as you're timely with sending it to us, which I have tended to be in the past, doing everything in your power to make it sound good and don't half-ass it, anything like that. Yeah, it works out great. I love doing solo broadcasts. I've talked about this a little bit before, but solo commentary is not something that I just started doing in New Japan. In fact, I was doing solo commentary before I was ever doing wrestling commentary at all. My start in the business predates me getting into the business, when I would stream on Twitch during college days, and I would put on indie wrestling matches with no commentary and call them myself in front of like 4 people on Twitch, no one watching, doesn't matter, who cares. I was doing it. I was doing it to Fire Pro Wrestling World. I was doing it to WWE 2K games. And honest to God, I think that's like, it's so funny to think about the butterfly effect. Butterflies' wings blow over and it starts a whirlwind, right? And getting started that way, like through wrestling video games, which is the whole reason I even got into wrestling in the first place, by the way, was playing wrestling games with my dad and my brother growing up. It's kind of insane to see how that's spun into, here I am at 22 years old, working for one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world, doing my dream, right?
That is incredible. Yeah, like it tracing back to, you got Fire Pro on the screen and you're doing your thing, and now you've got Hiroshi Tanahashi on the screen and you're calling it. That's the game, bro. That's awesome. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Tremendous. As we wind down here, folks, last few questions. Walker's been very kind with his time.
We don't have to. We could go even longer if you want, brother. I don't mind.
I just feel bad because you're doing all the talking for me, so I feel like I'm on the apron.
I got probably another 45 to an hour in me.
All right, well, let's see how this goes. And I'm intrigued. I want to ask about this. So, and answer this in as much detail as you want because I don't know what your experience has been with it.
Okay.
For a lot of wrestling fans, you emerged almost overnight. Now, for you actually being on the roller coaster, of course, it's a much longer ride than that, and you're the one who's you've gone through all those independent shows and so on and so forth. But to most wrestling fans, myself included, I said it to you before we went live here. Your name just appeared as this is the new New Japan announcer,
Right.
which means a lot of people tuned into New Japan and suddenly it was your voice. How have you dealt with that? The kind of feedback that comes with that kind of profile being increased overnight, like because I'm sure announcers, I think even more than wrestlers, seem to divide people. Every announcer splits opinion. It seems like.
Yeah.
How has it been wrestling with that feedback and kind of picking out the good from the bad and just dealing with that? I'm interested.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had to realize over time that you cannot please everyone, as you just said. There is no perfect wrestling broadcaster. There are wrestling broadcasters that some people in the world worship that I don't think are worth the salt, and there are some that people hate that I think are some of the best to do it. Uh, and I think if I'm aware that my tastes do not match and they fall outside of the boundaries of what a general consensus online might be, I know I as a human being am going to fall outside of that for other people as well. And I think coming to terms with that was a little bit difficult to do, but it's also something I always knew I was going to have to do. When I was doing indie wrestling shows, keep in mind I wasn't doing GCW and like television and like things on Fight TV all the time. I especially didn't start there. I started in Oklahoma, crowds of 20 to 40 people, YouTube viewership of 0 to 15 to 100 if you're lucky on some of these shows we produced. And uh, admittedly, like because that viewership was so low, it was great I was getting the reps in, but no one was reacting, right? There was no God, I love the commentary from this 96 view video here, right? And because of that, when okay, so I do a Game Changer wrestling show in May of 2023, and it was the first time I had ever seen in 2 years of being in the business someone talk about me online. Just randomly came across my timeline. And it was nice things, but it was one of those moments where you go, "Oh my God, I'm being perceived." And
Yeah.
then, 4 or 5 months later, I'm signed with one of the largest wrestling companies in the world. This announcement comes out, and it's so funny. I think back on it, where I know for a fact people were looking up my name. Who is Walker Stewart? Reason why I have a YouTube channel that had publicly at the time a couple of matches I called and 3 highlight reels that I had made that I was shopping out to promoters to work for them. And the viewership on those went up by thousands overnight for no reason. And the comments, so this is the new guy, huh? Oh, I like his voice. Oh, cool. Good luck on your new job. And it was really nice. But bringing it all back together here for you, it was difficult to separate the genuine from the ingenuine, the disingenuous rather. There were things that some people said. I don't think I have to name them, but there are things that some people said online that I looked in the mirror and I listened to my stuff back and I went, you know what? Yeah, you're right. And then I fixed it.
Yeah.
There are things that even Kevin Kelly would watch back and he'd say, I like this, I didn't like this. And I, as legendary as he has been in wrestling broadcasting over 20 plus years in the business, I had to look at that and go, I agree with this, don't agree with this. And that was coming from Kevin, who's an incredible educator, taught Chris so much of what he knows. And Chris admits that himself. And Chris has turned into a great broadcaster. So it's picking apart what works for you, because what some people want is not what other people want. You also have to realize one voice on Reddit is not the voice of the hundreds of thousands that are going to watch this over the period of time. And also it's not going to be what's comfortable for you. And sometimes looking in the mirror and going, Walker, someone on Reddit and Twitter or whatever said you should try doing this, or they wish they heard this more out of you. There are some things I did on certain shows that I was like, I don't like that. It doesn't feel right for me. Realizing that you cannot force yourself to be, you can't shove a square peg into a round hole, right? And once I came to terms with that, realized, hey, here are some very genuine points to bring up. Here are some things that I'm going to kind of leave in the dirt, so to speak. I think that it's allowed me to develop my own style. I think that I have a style that is akin to those that I watched growing up. Admittedly, loved Michael Cole growing up. I think some people kind of hear a Michael Cole element in me from what I've seen on Twitter, at least. And I grew up listening to Jim Ross, and I was a big Joey Styles guy, and you know, just going back through the list. So I take elements of all those people. I take elements of all my influences growing up and being in the business. But I've done my best to try and develop it in a style that fuses all of those things and can still be defined as that's Walker Stewart's broadcasting. So I think that's a decent way to answer that.
It's a great way. It's a great attitude too, because like I mean, my experience is on 0.1% of yours, because most people that see me actively are seeking me out, whereas in your case, as I said, some people would have just tuned in New Japan World and suddenly there's a new voice, right? So I can't even imagine for you, but that's a very challenging thing to do, you know, to actually read a criticism and go, oh, there's some truth to this, and you know, but not let that kind of break you or change you. Figure out what works for you. It makes perfect sense.
And there were a couple that like I remember this one vividly. There are a couple that kind of didn't impact me like mentally to the point where I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But there were a couple that kind of broke me in the way of Walker showed no emotion in his voice during this main event. Meanwhile, I'm in my hotel gassed out with my voice killing me because I lost it all night, right? Like but again, that was one comment. And I've learned not to harp on any of these comments anymore, but I had harped on that one comment when there were a million positive ones, a million not being that real number, but you get what I mean. It takes, if you see one negative message, it takes 10,000 positive ones to reinforce that you did any good throughout the day, right? You are always going to focus on that negative. And it's been a bit of a mental shift, but changing that paradigm within myself to be able to say, hey, God, man, you sure this person said this about you. Who cares? Are your bosses happy? Are the people that pay you happy? Are you happy? And that was probably the biggest challenge to overcome, honestly, throughout the personal transition and all of this. But I'm very happy I got to do so.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that really stands out about you, we've said it a few times throughout the broadcast, and I'm sure it's regularly brought up to you, is your age, right? Everyone immediately responds to that of like, and to me, it's the case because, you know, I don't want to put you in a position to comment on your peers here, but to me, it's amazing because there isn't like, to my knowledge anyway, Walker, there isn't a plethora of young announcers that are really capturing the imagination or capturing the attention. Now, that doesn't mean they don't exist. They're not that I'm aware of.
Sure.
Do you think, I don't want to overstate it, but I'll be honest, it does concern me slightly when I think when you look ahead in wrestling and the next era of wrestling, and we look at the young wrestlers, I do sometimes wonder who the young voices are. Do you think those voices are out there working and we just don't know them, or do you think there actually is something that, you know, independent wrestling, the lack of quality announcing is a real problem? Where do you stand on that?
I think those voices are currently doing what I was doing a year ago, which is making sure they're everywhere and as many places as they can be, and still those as many places as they can be. Let's keep in mind what the independent system's like, folks. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe a show on Thursday, maybe. And odds are you're not booked every single day of that 3-day period every week. You know, 3 times 52, whatever that number is probably the maximum amount of wrestling shows that you are going to be able to hit as an independent. And that is if you fill every single weekend to completion, right? And a lot of people are working with the areas that they're in. I'm based out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma wrestling does not have a great reputation. Definitely nothing that is televised or streamed anywhere really at all, except the stuff that I was able to broadcast through my production work I did. So they say, you want to be successful in wrestling, get out of Oklahoma, go to Texas. You go to Texas, well, everyone goes to Texas. So now you can drive 10 hours in Texas. Texas is a big state, folks. You can drive 10 hours in Texas and still be in Texas, fun fact. And guys in Texas are like, oh, I'm traveling everywhere, but they're still in Texas. So then it goes, well, go to Arkansas, Louisiana, Kansas. And then I'm like, well, I'm hitting states. Let's go and focus on promotions, future stars of wrestling, great independent streams on Fight TV out of Las Vegas, Nevada. A lot of influential people. Solo Sikoa, Zoe Stark, just a lot of people that are kind of in that main WWE sphere right now came out of FSW. So I go, okay, there's the shot. GCW, massive traveling thing, and they work their way up time and time and time again. That's what this young crop of guys, a lot of which that I know, I could shout them out right here. James Southard, great wrestling commentator out of the state of Oklahoma, great friend of mine. When I talk about people that are on the road constantly, this guy exemplifies that. And I know that because he was the only person willing to get in the car with me when I was driving 1,000 miles round trip in a 2-day span, right? Carmen Michael out of Alabama, who's an incredible broadcaster as well. Terrence Ward, who does some stuff in Memphis wrestling and stuff outside of professional wrestling for other sports, is an incredible ring announcer. And if you look for these people, they're there. I made a tweet earlier in the day talking about how ESPN, an ESPN broadcaster just signed with WWE. WWE just announced that earlier today. And there are some people that kind of get all up in arms about that. Why do they not give those spots to wrestling commentators? And there's two sides of that. First off, they want someone that is already polished and someone that comes from a sports broadcasting background, like the CFL, I think, the College Football League, or Canadian Football League, whatever. College Canada, there's colleges in Canada. But someone who comes from that background is already going to have that polish, that prestige, that tonality, that storytelling ability for the most part that you'd have to train up an indie wrestling guy to be able to do. And I talked in that tweet earlier on. It's a real big, long one. You can go find it later on if you want, folks. But I still believe everything I said in it. It makes the ceiling of entry higher for broadcasters, the way that the NIL program in WWE, where they're bringing in college athletes and training them to wrestle from the ground up, makes it harder for indie wrestlers to be able to be signed, right? And that's why a lot of people are turning now to a New Japan, to an AEW, et cetera, et cetera. But that ceiling continues to grow, which means that you have to work harder. And I had to do it to get the attention of Kevin Kelly, who gave me the attention of New Japan Pro Wrestling. That guy, love him to death in a lot of different ways personally, but at the time, he definitely a hard guy to impress in a lot of ways. And he saw value in me and didn't in others. And while I'm grateful for that, it wasn't my commentary that made him go, oh, this kid's good and we're going to put him over. It was me going to him and going, hey, I worked 280 shows in the last 2 years of my career.
Right.
That was what did it. So these guys are out here doing the work. It does concern me a little bit the same way, Joe. I'm not going to lie. Dave Meltzer told me this when we went out and had a dinner in San Jose before Battle in the Valley. Said that for the most part, I'm the youngest international wrestling broadcaster pro wrestling has seen since Shivani first started. Well, Tony Schiavone's still going full time, and God bless Schiavone, but everyone has that age ceiling, right? And a lot of the top broadcasters right now, maybe sub Excalibur and a couple other people in and out. Eventually, just as the way time works, everyone gets aged out over time. And some of these young guys are going to have to fill these spots and step up. And I'm hoping that the ones that are killing it on the independent scenes, and it's very few and far between, because you and I both talked about this earlier on, the independent wrestling scene is very, very desolate when it comes to good wrestling broadcasting, right? Very desolate for it. I'm sure there's some great broadcasters out of England as well. The most I'm familiar with is Simon Hill, Dave Bradshaw, a couple of other names in that regard. But yeah, man, I mean, there's definitely a level of looking at the future of this and going, I don't want to see myself as this, but I've had people tell me in private conversation that, like, oh, Walker, you're the guy setting the standard for the young guys right now. And that's a flag that I love to bear internally, but and I don't mind that pressure whatsoever. But there is one of those things where I'm like, great, I hope that what I do can set the standard for a WWE to be able to go, hey, we brought in Blake Chadwick, now works as Blake Howard in NXT, did a lot of independent wrestling work for 15 years. He also did UFC, a bunch of other stuff, but he's currently, or not UFC, but MMA style work. But currently in NXT and doing a phenomenal job there. Blake sets the standard for indie guys in WWE. I hope to set the standard for a guy straight off the independents, no other sports work or ESPN work or whatever going forward. And just hope, man, that these other companies follow suit, because I think that there's a lot of untapped potential for the core 0.01% of guys, maybe 20 people, men, women, whatever, that are truly deserving of these spots.
Yeah, I mean, you put it there like it's a process we're going to kind of have to see play out, right? Just inevitably. But within that wonderful answer, there was a headline that came and went that we must circle back to.
Okay.
Dinner with Dave Meltzer.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about this. This is the dream, brother. Dinner with Dave.
It was interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's Dave's a regular person like the rest of us, but he is just such a okay. I told you about my buddy James Southern, and James, great wrestling broadcaster, producer, editor, anything you tell that dude to do in the business, he's going to do it, and he's going to do it really well. Does a lot of it for Reality of Wrestling, which is Booker T's school down in Houston, Texas, that I had a lot of work that I did as well down there. James is a guy who is such an old head when it comes to wrestling and references, and such a territory guy. And, oh, do you know this obscure wrestler from 1971 that had this one and like, and it's almost like he's speaking a different language when he talks. And I was sitting here the whole time I'm with Dave, and I'm like, you and James would get along so well, because he could match the energy, right? Dave is just a guy. When I say I talked to Dave Meltzer, I'm saying Dave told me stories and told stories around me, and I absorbed. And I'm such a history guy. I try and pick up on everything I can in my 22 years of living. And I have so much respect in the world for Dave. I know that he can be a controversial figure to a lot of people, but I've never been one to play into star ratings. I've never been one to, because again, wrestling's an art form, and it's a sport, and it's subjective, and it's everything all at once. It's real life. It's not real life. It's everything. Of course, we're all going to have differing opinions about it. I think the people that obsess over these ratings and different things like that it's a little excessive, right? Keeps from, oh my God, if I obsessed over numbers like that more than I already do for my job, sorry, I would hate pro wrestling if I was really that, if it defined what I could watch or what I thought I could enjoy. So, but outside of that, man, like Dave's a great guy, and I enjoyed getting able to go out with him and a couple of other people in the San Jose area before Battle in the Valley.
That's awesome. Dave is such an unmatched poster on the Twitter gimmick that we will have our fun with some of Dave's posts. And there's times where, to your point, I'll be a victim. I'll see a story and go, oh, come on, Dave. But dude, if anyone focuses on that stuff over the history that is in Dave's like that stuff's secondary, is overstating. Like I've seen actually a lot of posts about, because there was a post about Dave that was like honest opinion on Dave Meltzer. And a lot of friends of mine have been quoting that by saying, kind of what we've talked about here, which is you can't take for granted the amount of knowledge that dude and the things he's experienced, the years he's put in. I mean, nothing but respect. Absolutely. That's I love it. I love the idea of just sitting there at dinner with Dave and letting him talk shop. It sounds great.
Dude, it was great. And like, there were a couple guys. There was a guy that I can't remember his name for the life of me. If I saw him, I'd remember it. But does some work alongside Dave, who would spur it on by being like, Dave, can you talk to me a little bit about? And
then he goes.
Dave just goes, and he's looking at me like I know what he's talking about, which is the funniest part of all this. I'm going, yeah, you tell him, Dave, you got it. You know what you're doing. But yeah, dude, I think Dave is great. And I also think that a guy like Dave Meltzer is an asset to professional wrestling.
Yes.
I genuinely do. And I feel that way. And it's the reason that I put the tweet out, hey, I want to do wrestling media. I used to, prior to being in the industry itself, because I didn't consider myself in the industry when I was doing this, especially. I wrote some articles, I wrote some editorials, I wrote some pieces for a couple of different websites. Nothing as big as a Fightful or a Wrestling Observer or whatever. But I covered my local independent scene. That's kind of what got me the first foot in the door in the business and getting to be on a microphone and doing what I do. So I know that's not easy, and I also know that it's hard to do it well. I didn't even do it well. I know that for a fact. I love a guy like Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, or a lot of these bigger guys, John Pollock, Brandon Thurston, especially. Those great guys are great. Yeah, man. I think that when wrestling media is done well, it is like such an additive, such an addition to what we do in the sport.
I don't think you realize you did it, but you kind of like inadvertently put me over there, because once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, I was on the aforementioned Fightful.com. So when you said Fightful, I went, oh yeah, the big leagues over there.
Well, you built that, obviously. You get it.
Yeah, I mean, Sean did his thing, but I was really the centerpiece over there.
Yeah.
But I'm interested on what. So this is saying that I often am torn on this topic myself, and I'm a complete hypocrite about it. And I'm intrigued what you think when it comes to announcing the balance between focusing on the match and having fun and cracking some jokes among yourselves. Now, the reason I concede I'm a hypocrite on this is I'll be the first guy to take a firm stance on, come on, guys, take it seriously. And then, Nigel McGuinness will make me laugh. And I'm like, actually, maybe they can continue to crack jokes. So to me, it always depends on the content itself. How is that, in the booth? Like, we can have some fun in this match, but we have to lock in where necessary. How do you balance that?
Yeah. Context is key. Always. Always. There's a very big difference between, night 17 Road to Wrestling Don Taku for the year opening 8-man tag match, or opening Young Lion 10-man time or 10-minute time limit bout, right? Versus main event IWGP World Title match, main event block qualifying match. There's levels to all of it. There's different hats. I got to take this hat off, going to put this hat back on. Sometimes you wear them both at the same time. You look a little silly, and that's part of the deal with it. I got a little bit of flack with this when I first started, but I'm not exactly like Mr. Jokes on commentary. I'm not exactly, I'm not going to say I'm not Mr. Charisma, but I'm not the guy who's going to go out of his way to, pop the boys, as they say. But when I am placed in a booth with someone who is an over-the-top personality, and I talked to you about this guy before we went on air, but Gino Gambino during New Japan Cup has been some of my favorite time in New Japan Pro Wrestling calling the action so far, because I get to tone back a lot of the over-the-top on my end and just be, the straight-laced, here's the story, here's the play-by-play, whatever. And Gino is just running amok, causing problems, knocked me over at the booth, loosened bolts on my chair, and made it break under me. I don't know if you saw that. That was crazy. Oh, but not credit. It's there, I think. I don't know. Someone probably saw it, not me. But so the dynamic there is always a great time. But again, with Gino, it's knowing your place, knowing your time. Gino is great at, here's the time to do the bit. He doesn't overuse the bit, but here's the bit. And then when I ask him for, what you're in the submission hold right now, Doki Choki, holy hell. How are you getting out of it? What do you do? What are you doing to cut this one off? And he's great at being able to answer that on both sides. So Gino, incredible multi-tool player. Chris has some comedy in him too. It's that British comedy. And it hits, and sometimes it doesn't hit, but I'm an American. And so I guess you can blame it on that. Old, like I say old, like 80s, 90s British television references that I don't understand and fly over my head. And then he's like, "Why'd you bury that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? I didn't get it." But no, like I'll do seriousness. Like I love working with Chris just as much as I love working with Gino, but for very different reasons, right? We talk about that need for a historian in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and while I'm wanting to build on that myself, because who knows, Chris may not want to stick around forever. Who knows? But I'm doing everything to absorb as much as I can from him, absorb as much as I can from a guy like Dave Meltzer, and absorb everything that I can just for my general research online to be able to carry that legacy forward when all is said and done. And I think that Chris's willingness to not only pass all of that down onto me, but also know kind of when to push the buttons a little bit. It's all a timing thing. So I've loosened up a bit since I first joined the broadcast for sure. I think you kind of have to when you're on, night 29 of Super Junior, and you're like, all right, top 4 matches mean something today. And my biggest goal in wrestling, and this is such a compliment when some people have sent this my way. I've gotten DMs before, I've gotten tweets at me. Walker Stewart made me care about the Young Lion match. That's so monumental.
That's perfect.
You're already going to care about the IWGP World Title. You're already going to care about every championship in New Japan Pro Wrestling, for the most part. But when I get that, wow, I was really into that 8-minute 8-man tag, and it's been very rare. But when I've gotten that, or wow, like these Young Lions are great, and Walker did a great job of talking about it, or whatever, that's such a meaningful thing to me. As a broadcaster, because that people are going to be up for the big stuff, but how can I get them up and ready and excited for everything else to come, right? And that is that's the focus.
I love it. Absolutely right. There's one last super chat. I'm going to ask one last question myself. We're going to do some final plugs, put over the G1, put over Walker. So we're going to do all of that. First, let's do the super chat. Liliana, once again, thank you for the support. Says, think you could convince New Japan to do Recount again, which Recount, for anyone unaware, was the kind of like history lesson content on YouTube, correct? Am I in the right?
Yeah. I would love to do the Recount. There's been conversation about it with our media team. I think the only issue that arises is getting the legal and paperwork situation to go through obtaining the footage from TVSI, because network rights and broadcasting rights work very differently in Japan than they do in the United States or other parts of the Western world. So I think that might be kind of the only hangup. I can't confirm or deny if we could ever do the Recount again. But the Recount was one of the first things I checked out when I signed with New Japan, to get such context added to everything that we do. And if we don't do some form of the Recount again, I definitely could see some form of educational or historical based content going forward, especially, as a guy who wants to be able to learn that himself and then utilize my voice to present it to the world as well in every fashion. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, last one from me, because I work in wrestling. I don't work in wrestling, or I do podcasts, but I'm in the weird bubble that I'm in, and it has a strange effect on how you watch or how much wrestling you watch. So I'm interested for you, especially as you gear up for a multi-week tour and all that's going to come with that. What is your weekly wrestling diet at this point? Are you now kind of in that bubble of the stuff you cover, or do you still watch a lot of wrestling that's separate from what you're announcing? I'm interested. Where do you fall on that?
There's a line between what I watch as a professional and what I watch as a fan. I will say, when you are involved in professional wrestling as a profession, even when I was on the independents, it changed how I watched any wrestling whatsoever from the top down. And I think I work on kind of this weird robotic Terminator-like mindset where I analyze stuff. And I'm analyzing everything from the actual in-ring product to here's a production change that I find interesting, to here's a commentary line. Would I have said that myself? Did that add to anything? I watch wrestling in that way now. And if anyone else does that, you're going crazy, but I somehow still enjoy it. So we're gonna see how long that lasts, right? But I think a majority of the wrestling that I watch, my weekly viewing, is very inconsistent. I do what I can to keep up with our partners at AEW and CMLL as much as possible. I'm out here downloading CMLL videos so I can watch them on my flight over. It's downloading right now, so I can put it on my iPad. So being able to just kind of have that. AEW, a lot of independent wrestling that some of my colleagues that I met when I was full time on the indies do. Just stuff randomly on indiewrestling.tv or Title Match Network or any of these shows that are broadcasted, just to kind of see what my friends are getting up to, or hey Walker, can you watch this match, tell me what you thought. Different stuff like that that's sent my way. And then I do what I can to keep up with the WWE product. I will tune into an occasional Raw, SmackDown, NXT. tend to hit a majority of all the pay-per-views that come out, or PLEs, I think they call them now.
Yes.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Oh,
I gotta abide by the verbiage. So it's a local medical facility, and they call it a PLE. So yeah, please pay me. No, I keep up with as much wrestling as possible. I'm trying to fit more retro stuff in there as we go to, especially as the New Japan World Service continues to get more and more of the old content added back. Doing everything in my possible to watch old stuff there. Even, especially stuff from when Kevin Kelly, Steve Corino were calling, or Kevin and Don, just to feel out their dynamic more as well. Very analytical again when I watch wrestling. And sometimes I'm just throwing on Nitro just to do it.
Yes.
Sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes you got to go for it. Sometimes you just got to watch, like, we're on the brink of death. We know it's all going down.
Yes.
So Juventud Guerrera beating Liger for the IWGP Junior title on Nitro. Sometimes you got to watch, and sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I regret.
Dude, I'm way further away from wrestling than you are, obviously, but you absolutely need those, like, factory reset viewings, right, where it's like, you know what, I actually need to, like, just watch some wrestling, just because that's why we do, is we love it, right? So absolutely. Okay, we're gonna do some plugs here. This has been a hell of a time, folks. We hope you've enjoyed this. Walker, you've done a great job selling.
Thanks.
New Japan, G1, and everything in between. So I don't think your final conclusion needs to really do much work, but I'm going to give you the floor nonetheless. Tell the people about where they can watch the G1, and then yourself personally, where they can follow you and all you're up to. Take it away, brother.
Awesome. Hey, well, I just want to say, it's all the grinners out there. It's been a great time. I very much enjoyed it on the broadcast. Joe and we've been going back and forth as to, what we both are very attractive men and possibly similarly looking men. But I think we've discovered throughout this broadcast, it's scientific research. I said at the beginning that, I might have the voice, but Joe's definitely the more attractive out of the two of us. So you can call it there. And we're calling spades, but you can vote online with all your super chats. And Joe keeps all the money, by the way. I don't want to remind you. Joe keeps the money. But talking G1, my favorite thing to do. We're going to be live every single night. There's going to be 19 nights of G1 Climax. I fly out coming up next week, July 17th. I'll be on my way to Tokyo, from Tokyo to Osaka. Osaka, our first two opening nights for G1, and some massive matches that are going to be involved this year. I mean, even with, you just look at the names and then revolve them through the rest of what's happening, but Konosuke Takeshita taking on the entirety of B Block is going to be something to watch. Jeff Cobb versus Takeshita, Takeshita versus Tsuji, Takeshita versus Narita, on and on through the board. Umino, Zack Sabre Jr., blah, 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 blah. There's so much happening in this year's G1. We are guaranteed, for the most part, other than Naito, no one in this tournament has won G1 Climax before in their career. We are nearly guaranteed a first-time winner at G1, which we have not had in quite a few years. So I'm very excited. The roof is going to be blown off the place. We're not even going to need a roof. We're not even going to put it on. Well, we're gonna fill buildings to capacity. It's going to be a great time. You can watch it live in English, njpwworld.com, kicking off July 20th, going on to the 21st, going on through the rest. The finals taking place August 18th in Ryogoku, and I can't wait to be there. It'll be my first time in Ryogoku too, so I'm fired up.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, I think, just as a fan watching from home, I think that's the coolest wrestling venue of all. I really do. I've often said, like, if you put together my dream card and you said, where's it going to take place? Sumo Hall. It's an incredible building. Absolutely. Okay. Wonderful. You got me more excited for it, dude. Great.
Hey, there you go.
Great to have you on. Seriously, thanks for being a good sport about looking like a podcast. I'm sure it was really annoying when you were having an actual career. Like, seriously, I appreciate it. So thanks.
You're absolutely fine.
Yeah, thanks for being cool, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving us so much of your time. My goodness, 100 minutes coming up here. So, folks, please support Walker. He's doing his thing, and I think you can tell from this conversation that I think, dude, you seem to know what you're doing. I'm going to put it that way. You're on point this evening. So,
thank you.
Everyone support Walker. Great to have you on, brother. And we'll do this again sometime, I'm sure.
Awesome. We can Grin on a late night one more day. One more night. Make it happen.
I just, just remember me when when you're making the millions. I'm still
Oh,
going to look like you, son.
oh, yeah.
You know.
What makes you think I'm not making the millions? Hold on a minute.
Well,
We got to talk.
it
Good
was a
Lord.
super chat reference. Super chat reference.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you're making millions in super chats, and I'm not
of
getting a cut.
course,
So good
of
Lord,
course,
wow,
yeah,
what a
of course.
sloppy shop, sloppy shop. I can't believe.
Well, yeah, the late night Grim. What do you expect, really? Right? I know.
It's late night. I get it. All right.
Yeah, it is what it is. All
Yeah,
right,
the
folks.
G in G1 stands for Grin.
Many have said that. You're the first
Yeah,
one, but many have said it.
including that. You'll hear it live on the show. Tune in on the opening night.
There you go. I love it,
Hold me to it.
folks. We will be back this Friday for the triple main event, Grin Along. We're going to be on for like 8 hours on Friday. We start at 10 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to be on the air from like 3 a.m. through to like 11 a.m. So there's going to be a whole squad. There's like 8 people on that show. So join us then. Next week, we have the 7 squashes of Sid. There's some Sid Vicious content covered. Oh, yeah. Big business.
Wow,
Big
I'm
business.
hearing big business. I'll have to tune in for that one.
We have Grin Grappler Jeff Jarrett at the end of the month too. So there's a lot coming up, but I'm not sure anything's going to top this. It's been a hell of a time. As I've said, folks, please support Walker. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Also, it helps us out a lot. Leave a comment below. I mean, there's a lot of material I feel on the screen here. You know, I feel like
we said words. Words were exchanged. You know, it was a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you enjoyed this, do all those things. Most importantly, keep grinning and enjoy this wonderful outro. Have a good night, folks. It's been a blast.